Hello and thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be doing a daisy flower shape using the masking fluid to mask out the petals and then applying some Brusho. The reason I've chosen the daisies is because there's so many of them this year. All down the canal side, all along the roads, there's loads of great big dog daisies, so I thought it'd be a nice flower to begin with. But of course you don't really need one in front of you to draw one because it's a very simple shape. So I'm not sure if this is showing up on the camera, but I did a guideline of an ellipse to fit it into, then the centre, and then I fit the petals into that. So like I say, you don't really need one in front of you to do the shape of a daisy. We all know what a daisy shape is. Okay, so I've just done those pencil lines fairly faintly so that you know, they disappear once we start putting the paint on. So I'm going to use the masking fluid by Winsor & Newton. Now I've perhaps talked about this before, but these lids are dreadful to get off. I cannot get them off just like this, and I'm not a weakling, so what I have to do is get my pliers. So really, if anybody knows a make that don't have these ridiculous lids, I'd be happy to know if they're any good or not, because this is getting towards the end and I really don't want to buy another one of these where I have to get the pliers out to get the lid off. So that's all I do, is hold it tight with the pliers, then I can get the lid off. So that's something handy to have in your studio, actually, is a pair of pliers for all sorts of jobs. Okay, so I've got the now I've got the masking fluid. What I use to put it on is this shaping tool. So it's basically a shape, it's called a shaper, and it's got a little rubber tip to it, and it's used for pushing paint around the paper, but I use it for putting the masking fluid on, because I find the masking fluid brushes out, you can't get that fine a line, and it's much easier with this shaping tool to get that masking fluid on. So what I'm going to do now is I'll carry on and do each petal, but I'll speed the video up at this point as I get these petals done. But I'm not going to do the centre, so I'll leave this centre as it is and just fill in all these petals, and then I'll come back to you in a moment once I've done that. Now each petal's completely filled in and completely dry, and it's best if you leave it to dry naturally. You'll find with the masking fluid, if you do dry it with the hairdryer, it can make it more difficult to remove from the paper afterwards. So I wouldn't advise using the hairdryer. You can do if you're in a rush, but it's better to leave it to dry naturally. So what I'm going to do is spray the paper. So let's just get my sprayer, I've left it out of the way. One of those days I'm struggling with lids. And I'm just going to spray over the whole thing, because I want plenty of water in this painting to make it nice and loose, but also to make it nice and summery. We don't want any heavy colours on here. And now I've made, if you can see, I've made a nice big wash of the Sunburst Lemon Brusho. You can see I've spilt a little bit of something other colour in that end, but it's the Sunburst Lemon, which is a beautiful colour, and we're just going to put that more or less all over, just with a nice big brush, and just let it flow into that water that's already there. And I won't go right to the edge of the paper, I'll just let it fade out on the edge of the paper there. And some extra in the centre, because of course the centre of the daisy is nice and yellow. Well, this is just a practice paper, it's a new practice paper that I bought. I'll put the links down below to any materials that I use. And you can see it's sort of cockling a bit because it is only a practice paper, but it's all taped down around the outside, so it should dry nice and flat once it's dried. Okay, so I've just dropped that wash all over that picture. And now it's going to be a very quick video today, a very quick way to do a daisy. Apart from the drying time, is you need to wait for the masking fluid to dry, and then we'll need to wait for the paint to dry before we can take the masking fluid off. But apart from that, the actual process of the drawing and the painting is very quick. So I'm going to get some more of the Sunburst Lemon and put that in the centre of that flower to give us a little bit of texture And then I'm going to pop a little bit around the outside as if we've got some more flowers and things in the background and some more texture. But don't overdo it. That's enough. So that was the Sunburst Lemon, and another nice sunny colour is some orange. So we're just getting a tiny touch of orange on the end of the brush, and again just drop it around. So this time we maybe could put a little bit in the centre actually, because maybe get some bits of orange in the centre there. So quite randomly, and you see we've got these big pools of water, but that's going to make different effects as it draws the pigment towards it as well. So Brusho's best if you leave it to dry naturally. And if you don't overdo it with the colours. Okay, so that was the orange. And then we're going to put some green in, but your colour choice is entirely up to you. You might want to do it completely different colours. I'm going to put some green a bit nearer to the centre, but not in the centre, so that when we take that masking fluid off, it's going to show up a little bit more, the white against the green. So here where it's in a bit of a big block of colour, some of that's under the masking fluid anyway, so some of that will be coming off. I'm just looking out the balance between my lights and darks. I want some more darks around the base of the picture to give it a bit of balance at the bottom. So I'll pop the green out of the way, and we could leave it at that, but this is my favourite colour, and I thought we'll just put a little bit of this in as well, just as a bit of a contrast. And this is the lovely, lovely turquoise. But I'm not going to overdo it with this, I'm just going to put in one or two places. And of course if it starts to dry, you know, it's drying a bit round the outside, you can always get your sprayer and put a bit of extra water on. I'm just going to get the sprayer and spray just at the outside edges a little bit, not too much. Just let it flow out a little bit more. And then we're going to leave that for quite a long time to dry, so I'll probably leave it overnight and come back to it in the morning to take off that masking fluid, and you'll see it looks completely different by the morning. Now actually thinking about it, if there's any areas where you want it to be darker, perhaps in between some of the petals, you could just at this stage manipulate it, but I'm not going to bother with that too much. But that's something that you could do whilst it's wet. If you wanted to get a bit more contrast between your lights and your darks, you could manipulate it into those areas between the petals. Okay, so I will come back to you when that's completely dry. Now that's completely dry, the first thing I'm going to do is try and brush off any excess. So for this you just need a big soft brush just to catch those bits of Brusho powder that were on top of that masking fluid, so that we're not getting them all over our fingers. So the biggest mistake people make with masking fluid is being impatient with it. Just take your time getting it off. I like to use my finger. You can use an eraser, but if you use your finger you can feel where the masking fluid is still left on the paper. So just start with one petal and very delicately pull back the masking fluid, and then carry on all the way through. But just gently. I'm going to start and see the petals emerging. They've got some colour on them from where it wasn't totally covered, but also from where, can you see I'm picking up bits with my finger. Can you see the colour of my finger now? And this is the nature of Brusho. Now all the masking fluid is removed, you may have seen that as I was doing it I did tear the paper in a couple of places. That's because it's a cheap practice paper, so if you use the better the paper you use, the less this will happen. So one thing you can do to rescue it is to get a tiny piece of, just rip off a tiny piece of sandpaper and just gently get rid of that paper tear there. And that just preserves the paper and stops, because if you're going to paint over it again and you left those tears as they were, the paint would sort of rush into that area. Now can you also see here, these petals have sort of become indistinct from each other. It was where some of the petals were folding over. So now with a green pencil I'm just going to put a bit more detail into those areas. Sort of have one coming behind another. And perhaps in one or two places around the centre as well. I'll just bring in some of those petals and give it a little bit of extra shape. So you could put a lot of pencil on the top if you wanted, or just a little bit, or none at all. This is just all extra to bring the whole thing together. Okay, and if you wanted to, you could get some light blue or something like that to make some shadows on the petals, but I think I just quite like leaving it as it is. You could shade some in where they're curving over, but I think really the less you do at it, the better it's going to be. So have a go yourself, let me know how you get on. Perhaps use different colours, perhaps use less water, less pigment, to see if you want to get a softer effect with more subtle colours than I've got. I put plenty of pigment on because I wanted there to be a big contrast between the white and the dark. So we've gone nice and dark with the greens there, but still got that light coming through with the yellow that we put on initially. And I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial. Thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.